My daughter-in-law opened my medicine cabinet without permission, snapped my pills in half, and said, "This way they will last you longer and we save money." That very same night, my heart started to fail. In the consultation room, the doctor stared at me intensely and dropped a sentence that froze the room. "Ma'am, someone is tampering with your medication, and that could have killed you." At that instant, my daughter-in-law went white as a sheet. "My name is Margaret. I am 67 years old, and I never imagined I would be writing these words." That afternoon in Dr. Evans's office, the air became so thick I could barely breathe. The fluorescent lights buzzed over our heads while my son, Jason, held my hand tightly, not yet understanding the magnitude of what we were about to hear. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, was sitting in the back with that polite smile she had perfected over 3 years, the same smile she used when she called me "sweetie" in a sugary voice while taking away everything I loved. Dr. Evans is not one to sugarcoat the truth. She has been seeing patients at General Hospital for 30 years and has that direct gaze that makes you feel she is seeing right past your skin. When she opened my file, her eyebrows furrowed. She checked the blood results once, twice, 3 times. Then she looked me in the eyes and asked something that split me in two. "Mrs. Sullivan, does anyone else have access to your medications?" I did not understand the question. Or perhaps I did not want to understand it. Jason did not either. But Tiffany changed. I saw how her face lost color, how her fingers gripped the edge of the plastic chair, and in that moment, I knew that something terrible was about to come to light. "Your medication levels in your blood are dangerously irregular," the doctor continued with a firm voice, but loaded with concern. "According to your prescription, you should be taking extended-release tablets of 200 milligrams. But the analysis shows that you are receiving fragmented doses, as if someone had broken the pills." The silence that followed was deafening. Jason squeezed my hand harder. I felt the world tilting to one side. "Breaking the pills?" my son asked, confused. "Why would anyone do that?" The doctor leaned forward with her hands clasped on the desk. "Because when you break an extended-release pill, you break the mechanism that controls how the medicine is released into the body. Instead of receiving the correct dose over 24 hours, the patient receives dangerous spikes followed by sharp drops. For someone with cardiac arrhythmia like you, Mrs. Sullivan, that can provoke cardiac arrest." My mind flew back 3 weeks. To that moment in my own bathroom, in front of the spotted mirror that I no longer cleaned because Tiffany said I wasted time on details. I had opened my pill bottle to take the morning dose and found something strange. The capsules were cut in half, neatly divided, as if someone had used a sharp knife. Tiffany entered the bathroom at that moment, drying her hands on a towel. She saw me observing the bottle with a frown and said, with that casual voice she used for the most poisonous things, "Oh, yeah, I cut them. That way they last you longer and we save money. Those pills cost $200 a month, sweetie. We cannot afford those luxuries." I remember I wanted to protest, that I opened my mouth to tell her they were my pills, bought with my Social Security check, for my sick heart. But then she put a hand on my shoulder, with that soft pressure I had learned to recognize as a warning, and added, "Besides, you know that Jason and I are tight on cash. Every bit of help counts." I said nothing, as always. That night I took half a pill as she had arranged. At 3 in the morning, I woke up with my heart beating like an out-of-control drum, sweating cold, feeling like an invisible hand was squeezing my chest. Jason had to call the ambulance. And now, in this office that smells of disinfectant and fear, Dr. Evans was finishing putting together the puzzle that I had been denying myself to see. "Ma'am, someone is tampering with your medication, and that could have killed you." All eyes turned toward Tiffany. She, who always had an answer for everything, who always knew how to manipulate every situation in her favor, went mute, white as the paper of the medical prescriptions that the doctor held in her hands. And I, Margaret Sullivan, widow of Frank, devoted mother and forgotten grandmother, finally understood something I should have understood a long time ago. My daughter-in-law did not just want my house, she wanted me to disappear. But what Tiffany did not know is that this afternoon, in that office, something inside me also broke in half, and what came out of that crack was no longer the silent woman she knew. If you want to know how an older woman can go from victim to victor, subscribe so you can continue knowing stories like this. stories of women who refused to die in silence. To understand how I arrived at that office, with a broken heart and manipulated pills, I have to go back 3 years, to that Sunday in October, when I opened the door of my house in the quiet suburbs and saw Jason standing on the threshold with 2 suitcases and a woman I had never seen, smiling at his side. "Mom, this is Tiffany," said my son, with that light in his eyes that only men in love have. "We got married 2 months ago. Sorry for not inviting you. It was something intimate. We need to stay with you just for a couple of months while we save up for a deposit on an apartment." A couple of months turned into 3 years. But I did not know that yet. My house isn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen and living room that share the same space. I bought it with my late husband Frank 30 years ago, when prices were still accessible for working people like us. He was a mechanic. I worked as a housekeeper. Every brick of that building cost us sweat and sacrifice. When Frank died 8 years ago from a massive heart attack, I was left alone with my memories and a Social Security check of $1,500 a month that barely covered living expenses. Jason is my only son. I raised him with all the love a mother can give, sometimes with too much love, I admit now. After his father's death, he became more distant, visiting me less and less. When he appeared that Sunday with Tiffany, I felt that God was returning my son to me. How foolish I was. Tiffany was 32 years old, 10 years younger than Jason. She was thin, tall, with hair dyed a blonde that didn't look natural, but that she wore with pride. She wore tight clothes and spoke with that vocal fry accent that tries to sound refined. From the first moment, her eyes scanned my house as if she were calculating the value of every item. "How cozy, sweetie," she said while entering without waiting for an invitation. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor that I had just mopped. With a little modernization, this could look very good. I didn't like that word, modernization. It sounded like erasing, like replacing, like everything of mine was useless. The first few days were a perfect performance. Tiffany helped me in the kitchen, asked me for Frank's recipes, called me "dear sweetie" with a honeyed voice. Jason worked a double shift at the auto parts factory where he was a supervisor. He left at 6 in the morning and returned at 9 at night. I thought at least I would have female company at home, someone to have coffee and chat with. How naive. The first sign arrived the second week. I was preparing oatmeal when Tiffany entered the kitchen with a bag from the supermarket. She pulled out a gleaming stainless steel pot and said, casual as someone commenting on the weather, "Sweetie, your pots are so old. I bought this new one. It is better that you use the modern ones. Yours have already served their purpose." I looked at my cast-iron Dutch oven, the same one my mother gave me when I got married. 40 years preparing meals in it, 40 years of flavor and memory cooked over slow fire. "This one works fine," I said, trying to sound firm but without confronting. "Not anymore, Margaret," she responded, and I noticed she had stopped calling me sweetie. Besides, they take up a lot of space. I am going to store the old ones in a box in the garage. She didn't store them, she threw them out. 3 weeks later, I found my Dutch ovens and my copper pans in the trash, broken accidentally when Tiffany was organizing. When I asked her, she hugged me with fake tenderness. "Oh, sorry, sweetie," they slipped. "But you have the new ones now, right? It is better this way, believe me." Jason saw nothing wrong. "Mom? She is trying to help. The house needed a little updating." That is how the dismantling of my life began, piece by piece, memory by memory. Within a month, Tiffany redesigned the living room. My lace curtains that Frank brought me from Pennsylvania disappeared, replaced by gray, minimalist blinds. "It is more modern, sweetie. Nobody uses lace anymore. That is for old ladies." The silver picture frame with our wedding photo was put away because it makes the room look dated. In its place, she hung an abstract painting of black lines that she bought for $50, and that to me looked like framed garbage. But the worst part, what truly broke me, was my mahogany rocking chair. It was a beautiful piece, hand-carved, with curved armrests and a high back. My father had it made especially as a wedding gift. For 40 years I sat in it to darn socks, to console Jason when he was a boy, to mourn Frank after his death. That rocking chair knew all my secrets. It had absorbed all my tears. One Saturday I returned from the grocery store, and it wasn't in its place by the window. I found Tiffany in the backyard, with the rocking chair thrown among old scrap metal and trash bags. One of the armrests was splintered. "What are you doing?" I yelled, something I rarely did. "Oh, that! It's just in the way, sweetie. It takes up a lot of space, and it is very old. I already bought a new armchair, minimalist style. You are going to love it. That rocking chair was a gift from my father." "Well, your father had very old-fashioned tastes," she responded, wiping her hands on her jeans. "It is time for you to move on, Margaret. Clinging to the past isn't healthy." I cried all night hugging that damaged rocking chair. Jason said nothing when I told him. He just sighed wearily. "Mom, it's just furniture. Tiffany has good taste. Let her be. She knows about these things." That's when I started to understand that I had lost more than a rocking chair. I had lost my son. 2 months turned into 6, then into a year. Every time I asked when they would move, Tiffany had an excuse. That the apartments were too expensive, that Jason had just had an unexpected expense, that it was better to save a little more. Meanwhile, my house stopped being mine, and I became a stranger in my own home. But I hadn't seen anything yet. Because Tiffany didn't just want my house, she wanted me to cease existing inside it. And little by little, with the patience of a snake, she was achieving it. A year and a half into living together, I no longer recognized my own house. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was that I no longer recognized myself. I had turned into a shadow that walked on tiptoes through the hallways, that asked for permission to use her own kitchen, that apologized for existing, and Tiffany knew it. She enjoyed it. Mornings were my daily torture. I have always been an early riser. Since I worked cleaning houses, I have the habit of getting up at 6. I like to make myself a coffee the way my grandmother taught me, with a little cinnamon, sit in the kitchen, and watch the sunrise through the window. It was my sacred moment, my only space of peace. Until Tiffany decided that moment belonged to her too. One morning I went down to the kitchen and found her there, in a pink satin robe and her hair wrapped in a towel. She had moved all my dishes from their place. The coffee maker I used was stored in the highest cabinet, out of my reach. In its place, there was a gleaming Italian espresso machine. "Good morning, sweetie," she said, without turning to see me, pressing buttons on her new machine. "I am going to start making breakfast early. Jason needs to eat well before work. You can have breakfast later, right? After all, you don't have to go anywhere." I stood there, barefoot on the cold floor, feeling the words get stuck in my throat. You don't have to go anywhere, as if my life had no purpose, as if my days were empty and insignificant. "I also eat breakfast early," I managed to say, with a voice barely audible. "Well, you will have to wait," she responded, beating eggs in my skillet. "The kitchen isn't big enough for us both to be here, getting in each other's way. Besides, I already reorganized everything. Now things are where they should be. Where they should be. In my kitchen, where I cooked for 30 years, where I fed my husband and raised my son. Now things had to be where Tiffany decided. But I said nothing. I never said anything. I went up to my room with an empty stomach and a heart even emptier. From the window, I saw Jason leave for work, kissing Tiffany at the door. Neither of them looked toward my window. I was invisible. The unwritten rules multiplied every week. I couldn't watch television in the living room because Tiffany was watching her reality shows. I couldn't wash my clothes on Sunday because that was Tiffany's laundry day. I couldn't invite my cousin Linda to have coffee because the house isn't up for visitors. The house? Which house? The one I paid for with 40 years of work? The one that has my name on the deed? But I didn't even dare to say it out loud anymore. The most painful change came when Tiffany decided that my bedroom was too big for a single person. One afternoon, I returned from buying bread and found 2 men taking apart my queen-sized bed, the one where I slept with Frank for 28 years, where Jason was born, where I cried as a widow. "What are you doing?" I asked, with my heart pounding against my ribs. Tiffany appeared in the doorway with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, sweetie. Good thing you're here. Look, Jason and I need more space. We are going to take the master bedroom. We set up a twin bed for you in the back room. It is smaller but sufficient for you, right? After all, you are alone. The back room. A space of 6 feet by 10 feet. Windowless, with a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling. That's where I kept the brooms and old boxes. That is where Tiffany considered I should sleep. "This is my bedroom," I said, and my voice sounded broken, pathetic. "I slept here with my husband." "Your husband died 8 years ago, Margaret," Tiffany responded, and used my name as if it were an insult. "It is time you get over that. We are a young couple. We need privacy and space. You should understand." "But Jason," I started to say. "Jason agrees," she interrupted me. "In fact, it was his idea. He is already tired of you pretending that this house is still yours when clearly it belongs to both of us now. We are his family now." Those words were like acid on an open wound. Jason, my son, wanted me to sleep in the storage room? He wanted to erase me from the spaces I built with his father? That night, when he arrived from work, I waited for him in the living room. I needed to hear it from his mouth. I needed him to look me in the eyes and tell me it was true. "Jason, do you want me to leave my room?" He didn't even look at me. He was tired, with his coveralls stained with grease, shoulders slumped. "Mom, don't start. Tiffany and I need our space. We aren't newlyweds living in your house anymore. This is temporary until we leave. But while we are here, we need to be comfortable." And I asked, and hated how weak my voice sounded, "Don't I need to be comfortable in my own house?" Then something changed in his expression. A shadow of annoyance, of being fed up. "See? That is why Tiffany says, you are difficult. You always play the victim. We are asking you for a temporary favor, and you turn it into a drama. You know what, Mom? Grow up. You aren't the queen of this house anymore." I froze. My son, the boy I rocked when he cried at night, the teenager I defended from bullies at school, the man I supported when he lost his first job, had just told me to grow up, that I wasn't the queen of my own house. I moved to the back room that same night, alone, in the dark, lying on a twin bed that smelled of dampness. I heard through the walls how Tiffany and Jason laughed in my bedroom, in my new bed that they had bought without asking me. And there, in that room where I kept the brooms, I started to understand something terrible. Tiffany hadn't invaded my house out of necessity. She had done it for conquest. And Jason wasn't her victim. He was her accomplice. But the worst was yet to come. Because when Tiffany finished taking away my space, she decided it was time to take away my dignity too. And for that, she needed me to disappear a little each day, until finally I ceased to exist completely. The first day of every month I went to the bank to cash my Social Security check, $1,500 that the government gave me for the years I worked cleaning offices and other people's houses. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It covered my medicines, my food, my personal expenses. It was my independence, the only thing I had left, until Tiffany decided that money also belonged to her. It was a Tuesday in February. I remember the sticky heat that was already announcing spring. I had just returned from the bank with my envelope of cash when Tiffany intercepted me in the living room. She had a folder in her hands and that smile I had already learned to fear. "Sweetie, we need to talk about money," she said, sitting on the armchair she had bought to replace my old sofa. She patted the cushion next to her, like someone calling a dog. "Sit down." I sat, hugging my purse against my chest, as if that could protect me from what was coming. "Look, I have been doing the math." She opened the folder and took out a sheet full of numbers. "You live here, use electricity, water, gas, eat what we buy. It is fair that you contribute, don't you think?" "But I buy my things," I said, feeling the floor move under my feet. "I pay for my medicines? I buy my food?" "Oh, Margaret, please," she interrupted me, and her voice lost all the feigned sweetness. "Your food? You eat what I cook, use my gas, dirty the dishes I wash. The electricity bill last month came to $400. Do you know why? Because you spend all day with the fan on in that little room where you sleep. $400. I knew it was a lie. Our electricity bill had never passed 150, even in the hottest months. But Tiffany had the paper in her hand, the numbers printed, the confident voice of someone who knows she has the power. "Besides, there is the water," she continued, pointing to another line on her invented list. "You shower every day, wash your clothes, and then there is the food. I calculate that you eat about $200 a month of what we buy." "Tiffany, I buy my own bread, my milk, crumbs." She exploded. And there I saw the real woman behind the mask. "You buy pure crumbs and want us to support you as if you were a queen. Well, it is over, Margaret. Either you pay your share or you look for somewhere else to live." The silence that followed was like a punch in the stomach. Look for somewhere else to live? In my own house? In the house Frank and I built brick by brick? "How much?" I asked, and hated myself for sounding so weak. "Half of your check," she said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. $750. It is only fair. With $750 out of my $1,500, I would have $750 left for my medicines, which cost $200, for my transport, for any emergency. It was impossible. It was suffocating. It was robbery. But I looked at those cold and calculating eyes, and I knew that if I refused, Tiffany would find a way to make my life even more miserable. Or worse, she would convince Jason that I was a burden they had to get rid of. "It's fine," I whispered, and felt something inside me break definitively. Tiffany smiled, satisfied like a cat with a trapped mouse. "I knew you would understand. From now on, every first of the month, you give me your money. I will manage everything. Don't worry." Manage. What a pretty word to say. I will control down to the last dollar that belongs to you. That month I handed over my envelope, the next one too, and the next. Meanwhile, I watched how Tiffany bought new clothes at the mall, how she got her nails done every week at the salon for $50 a session, how she ordered food delivery from expensive restaurants because she was too tired to cook. All with the money I handed her as tribute for existing in my own house. But the biggest humiliation didn't come from numbers. It came from words. It was a Saturday afternoon. Tiffany had invited 3 friends over for lunch. I was in my little room, reading an old magazine, when I heard their voices in the living room. They were speaking loudly, laughing raucously. Curiosity made me approach the door. "No, seriously, girls," Tiffany was saying between laughs. "I live with my mother-in-law and it is a nightmare. The old lady spends all day doing nothing, just wasting electricity and food." "And why don't you kick her out?" asked one of her friends. "Oh, because Jason is very good, very noble. But I already told him. Either your mom cooperates or she goes. And now she gives me half her check every month. It's something, right?" The laughter that followed pierced me like knives. She called me the old lady. She said I spent all day doing nothing when I cleaned the whole house because she never lifted a finger. She bragged in front of her friends that she had forced me to pay her to live in my own house. "Damn mother-in-law," said another friend. "They are a burden, honestly. My mom also has one, and says the same. They just get in the way and spend." "Exactly," responded Tiffany. "But well, at least I have her controlled. I give her just enough for her medicines, and that's it. The rest I keep because, honestly, I do work. I work putting up with her." They laughed. They all laughed at me while I was 10 feet away, hidden like a thief in my own house, feeling how every word made me smaller, more insignificant, more invisible. When Jason arrived that night, I tried to speak with him. I told him what Tiffany had said, how I felt, how much it hurt to pay for a roof that was already mine. He didn't even lift his eyes from his cell phone. "Mom, Tiffany works all day maintaining this house. It is normal for her to be stressed and vent with her friends. Stop spying on conversations that aren't for you. Work all day?" I exploded, and my own voice surprised me. "Tiffany doesn't work. She spends all day watching television while I clean, cook the little they leave me, wash." "Enough," Jason interrupted me, and in his tone there was something new, something hard, almost cruel. "I am tired of your drama. Tiffany is right. You are a burden, an emotional burden that doesn't stop complaining. You should be grateful that we let you live here." "Let me live here? In the house with my name on the deed? Grateful to my son for not throwing me onto the street from my home?" I didn't answer. What could I say? My son was no longer my son. He was Tiffany's husband, the man she had molded over 3 years of constant manipulation. The boy I raised with love and sacrifice had disappeared, replaced by this stranger who saw me as an obstacle. That night, lying in my twin bed in the back room, I did the math. With the little I had left after giving money to Tiffany, I could barely afford my heart pills. If I had any emergency, if I needed to go to the doctor, if my shoes broke, I wouldn't have any way to pay for it. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own house, paying for the privilege of being humiliated. And the worst was yet to come, because Tiffany had discovered that, as long as I remained alive, she would have to share the space, share Jason's attention, share the inheritance she coveted so much. And a woman like Tiffany doesn't know how to share. She only knows how to take, consume, destroy. My pills were in the bathroom cabinet, the same ones that kept me alive, the same ones that cost $200 a month, and Tiffany had already seen them. The diagnosis arrived 6 months ago, in the middle of August. Cardiac arrhythmia, said the cardiologist at General Hospital. Nothing fatal if controlled, but dangerous if ignored. My heart beat irregularly, sometimes very fast, sometimes skipping beats, as if forgetting its function. They explained it was common at my age, aggravated by years of hard work and the stress of becoming a widow. Dr. Evans, a serious woman with thick glasses, handed me the prescription with a grave expression. Mrs. Sullivan, this medication is vital. It is called Cardizem Extended Release, 200 milligrams. You must take it exactly as indicated, 1 complete capsule every 24 hours. Never, under any circumstance, split or crush the pills. Understood? What happens if I do? I asked, not imagining that question would have such terrible answers. The capsules have a special coating that releases the medicine gradually throughout the day. If you break them, the entire content releases at once. It can cause a dangerous drop in blood pressure, severe dizziness, or, in your case, worsen the arrhythmia to the point of causing cardiac arrest. I nodded, scared but confident. I would follow the instructions to the letter. I wanted to live. I still had things to do, even though my life had been reduced to that dark little room and counting the days waiting for everything to get better. The prescription cost $200 per box, enough for a month. It was almost half of what I had left after paying Tiffany, but I had no choice. Without those pills, my heart would turn into a time bomb. When I arrived home that day with the pharmacy bag, Tiffany was in the kitchen eating imported cookies that cost $7 a pack. She saw me enter, and her eyes locked immediately on the bag. "What did you buy?" she asked, with that casual tone she used when she was calculating something. "My medicines. I have a heart problem." She stood up and snatched the bag from my hands before I could react. She took out the box, read the price on the sticker. I saw how her expression changed, how her eyes narrowed doing mental math. $200, she said, whistling softly. "Every month. That is $2,400 a year just on pills. I need them to live," I responded, reaching out my hand to recover my box. She held them out of my reach, studying it as if it were a valuable object. "Do you really need a whole pill every day? It seems like a lot. Surely half is enough. That way they last 2 months instead of 1. You save $200. The doctor said I cannot split them. Doctors always exaggerate," she responded, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "They want to sell more medicines. It is a business. But we aren't rich, Margaret. We have to be smart with money." She returned the box to me reluctantly. That night I stored my pills in the bathroom cabinet, that old piece of furniture with the spotted mirror where I had always kept my things. I thought they would be safe there. How foolish I was. The first 3 months, everything went well. I took my pill every morning. My heart stabilized. The dizziness disappeared. Dr. Evans was satisfied with my progress. "I see you follow the instructions to the letter. Mrs. Sullivan." I like that. But Tiffany hadn't forgotten about those $200 a month. I saw her looking at me sideways when I went to the bathroom in the mornings. I heard her make comments about how expensive it is to maintain old people, about how much the elderly spend on medicines they probably don't even need. One day, 4 months after my diagnosis, I went to the grocery store to buy vegetables. When I returned, I noticed something strange. The medicine cabinet was slightly open, something I never left like that. I opened it and checked my pill bottle. Everything seemed normal. It was in its place, with the correct number of capsules. But that night, when I took my dose, something felt different. The capsule seemed smaller, lighter. I observed it under the light of the naked bulb in my room. It had a faint line in the center, as if it had been opened and closed again. I attributed it to my imagination, to my growing paranoia. I took it. At 2 in the morning, I woke up with a racing heart, pounding so hard I felt the pulsations in my ears. The room was spinning, my head weighed like stone. I tried to get up and almost fell. The walls moved, the floor tilted. I crawled to the bathroom, I threw up. I sat on the cold floor shaking. I spent 2 hours there until the episode passed. In the morning, I felt exhausted, confused. I thought it had been something I ate, maybe the chicken left over from dinner. But it happened again, and again, and again. Every week, I had an episode. My heart ran wild in the middle of the night, or my pressure dropped suddenly during the day, and I had to sit down before fainting. The dizziness was constant. I started walking, hugging the walls for fear of falling. Jason noticed nothing. He left early, arrived late, barely saw me. Tiffany, on the other hand, watched me with that expression I now recognize as satisfaction, like someone watching a plan unfold exactly as planned. "Do you feel okay, sweetie?" she asked me with fake concern when she saw me pale, holding onto the doorframe. "You look bad, or could it be that you are being dramatic again? You know how old people are, always looking for attention." "I feel dizzy," I managed to say. "Oh, but if you do nothing all day, how can you get dizzy? Surely it is psychological. You should stop thinking so much about diseases." Psychological. As if the irregular beats of my heart were my invention. As if the cold sweat and tremors were theater to get attention. 3 weeks ago, things got worse. I went to the bathroom one morning, opened my pill bottle, and froze. The capsules were split, all of them. Neatly divided in half with a clean cut, as if someone had used a sharp knife or scissors. My heart did a flip that had nothing to do with arrhythmia. It had everything to do with fear. Tiffany entered the bathroom at that moment, as if she had been waiting. She was drying her hands on a towel, with that casual expression I knew so well. "Oh, yeah, I cut them," she said, like someone mentioning she washed the dishes. "That way they last you longer, sweetie. And we save money. Those pills cost $200 a month. We cannot afford those luxuries," the doctor said. I started, but my voice came out broken, without strength. "The doctor doesn't pay the bills here," she interrupted me, and her tone hardened. "We do. Jason and I work hard for this money. You just spend it. So we are going to be smart. Half a pill is enough. That way they last 2 months. And before you start with your drama, I inform you that Jason already agrees." Jason agreed? My son had authorized them to tamper with my medication? The same son I nursed, whom I cared for when he had pneumonia at 7 years old, whom I waited up for every night of his teenage years. I wanted to protest. I wanted to scream at her that those pills kept me alive, that the doctor had been very clear about not splitting them. But then, Tiffany put a hand on my shoulder with that pressure I had learned to recognize as a silent threat. "Besides, you know that Jason and I are tight financially. Every bit of help counts. Or do you prefer that we ask you to leave? Because that option is also on the table, sweetie." I stayed mute, trapped between two horrors. Taking altered medication that could kill me, or ending up on the street without a roof or money. At 67 years old, sick with a heart condition, with no one else in the world, I took the half pill. And the next, and the next. My body started to collapse. The episodes intensified. I stopped being able to sleep fully, for fear of not waking up. Every irregular beat reminded me that I was playing Russian roulette with my own life. And Tiffany knew it. I saw it in her eyes every time I stumbled, every time I grabbed the furniture to not fall. It wasn't concern I saw there. It was anticipation, like someone waiting for the day to finally claim a long-awaited prize. She wasn't taking care of me. She was killing me, slowly, calculatedly, with the precision of someone who knows exactly what she is doing. And I was letting her do it. The nights became my personal hell. Lying on that twin bed in the back room, with the bulb off because Tiffany complained that I wasted unnecessary light, I listened. I listened to everything through the thin walls of my own house, and what I heard destroyed me more than any physical pain. It was almost midnight when I heard them. Jason had just arrived from his double shift, exhausted as always. I heard his heavy steps in the hallway, the squeak of the door to my old bedroom opening. Then, Tiffany's voice, soft and manipulative like poison wrapped in honey. "Baby, we have to talk about your mom." I stayed motionless, holding my breath. My heart beat irregularly, as it always did lately, but now for a different reason. Out of fear of what I was about to hear. "Not now, Vivi. I'm dead tired," responded Jason with a hoarse voice. "It is important. Look, I know she is your mom, and you love her, but we have to be realistic. She is being dramatic about all this illness stuff." Silence. A silence that seemed eternal to me. "What do you mean?" my son finally asked. "That she is exaggerating her symptoms to get attention. Old people do that, baby. My grandmother was the same. She invented pain so we would all be attentive to her. Your mom does the same. But the doctor said she has arrhythmia?" "Of course she has arrhythmia," Tiffany interrupted him, and I could perfectly imagine her expression, that mix of feigned patience and condescension. "But it isn't as serious as she paints it. Have you seen how she suddenly gets dizzy when she wants us to pay attention to her? How she always feels bad precisely when we are having a moment alone?" "I hadn't thought about that," said Jason, and in his voice I detected doubt. My son was doubting me. "Well, think about it. She has turned this house into a hospital where she is the eternal patient and we are the nurses. I can't take it anymore, Jason. I arrived tired after doing the shopping, cleaning, cooking for the three of us, and she is lying down complaining of dizziness. Dizziness from what? If she does absolutely nothing." I wanted to scream. I wanted to go through that wall and show my son the truth, that I cleaned what she dirtied, that I cooked my own food because she had forbidden me from using her kitchen at convenient times, that I got dizzy because her hands had tampered with my medication. But my voice didn't come out. I stayed there, paralyzed in the darkness, listening to how Tiffany wove her web of lies around my son. "Besides," she continued, and her voice became softer, more intimate, "I think she is faking so we don't leave. She knows if she is very sick, you will never dare to look for our own place. It is emotional manipulation, baby, and it is working. I don't know, Vivi. She's my mom, and I am your wife," she responded, and now her tone had an edge. "Who is more important? The woman with whom you build your future, or the woman who already lived her life and now just wants to control you? Because that is what your mom does, Jason. She controls you with guilt." The silence that followed lasted an eternity. I was shaking, with the sheets pressed against my chest, begging God that my son would say something, that he would defend me, that he would remember who I really was. "You are right," Jason finally said, and those 3 words went through me like bullets. "She has been very demanding lately, always with complaints, always playing the victim." "Exactly," said Tiffany triumphantly. "And about her pills, did you see how dramatic she got when I told her to split them to save money? As if $200 were nothing. Do you know how much we spend on the house every month? More than $2,000. And she complains about contributing with $750. Yes, it is true that pills are expensive. They are expensive because she insists on buying brand name. I told her there are generics that cost half, but no, she wants the expensive ones, and then says she has no money. Please, that was a lie. Pure lie. Dr. Evans had explained to me that this specific medication had no generic version that was suitable, that $200 was the standard price. But Tiffany lied with such conviction that even I, who knew the truth, almost came to doubt. "And what do you suggest?" asked Jason, and in his voice there was no longer resistance, only fatigue and resignation. "That we set clear boundaries, that we make it clear to her that this is our house now, that we make the decisions. If she doesn't like it, let her look for another place. Does she have her check? She can rent a room somewhere? A room somewhere. As if I were garbage thrown out when it gets in the way. As if 67 years of life, 40 of marriage, 30 of paying for this house meant nothing. I don't know if I can do that, Vivi. She is still my mother, baby." And now Tiffany's voice became sweet again, seductive. "I know you have a good heart. That is why I love you. But your kindness cannot turn into weakness. Your mom is taking advantage of you, of us. And if we don't put a stop to it now, this will never end. Do you want us to spend our whole lives locked up here, waiting for her to die so we can live in peace? Waiting for me to die?" She said it just like that, bluntly, without shame. And Jason did not protest. He didn't say, "Don't talk like that about my mother." He said nothing. "Let me think about it," he finally murmured. "There isn't much to think about, baby. Either your mom changes her attitude and stops making drama, or we will have to make difficult decisions. For us, for our future." After that, silence. Then, sounds I didn't want to identify. My son and his wife in my bed, in my room, discussing my future as if I were a problem to solve, an obstacle to remove. I stayed awake all night, eyes open in the dark, feeling how every word I had heard dug deeper into my chest. My son, the boy born from my body, who nursed from my breast, who learned to walk holding my hands, believed I was a manipulator. He believed I exaggerated my illness. He believed I deserved to be thrown into the street. The following nights were worse, because now I could no longer not listen. Every night conversation between them was a new stab. "Your mom left dishes in the sink again. I don't know why we give her a roof if she can't even clean up her own stuff. Margaret, your mother ate the chicken I had saved for our lunch tomorrow. She is used to taking what isn't hers. Did you see that your mom went out without telling us? Surely she went to gossip with the neighbors, to cry to them about how badly we treat her. She is a busybody." And Jason just nodded. Or worse, he added his own complaints. "You are right. She is becoming impossible. I noticed it too. Every day she is more stubborn. I think we are going to have to talk seriously with her." Every night I died a little more. Not from the heart, although that was failing too. I died from the certainty that my son had chosen to lose me, that Tiffany hadn't had to try very hard to convince him that I wasn't worth it. One dawn, after a particularly cruel conversation where Tiffany suggested that perhaps my convenient illness would disappear if they forced me to move out, I had a panic attack. My heart accelerated to levels I had never experienced. The walls of the room spun. I felt I was drowning, dying. I managed to drag myself to the hallway. I held onto the wall, trying to reach his door to ask for help. I fell to my knees halfway there. "Help!" I whispered, but my voice didn't come out. "Jason, help!" His bedroom door was closed, the lights off, and me there, thrown on the floor of my own house, feeling my heart beating erratically, begging for my son to come out and see me. No one came out. No one heard. Or worse, they heard and decided to ignore me. I managed to crawl back to my room. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor, back against the wall, hoping every irregular beat wasn't the last. In the morning, when they saw me pale and shaking, Tiffany just said, "At it again with your drama, sweetie. You should get an Oscar for these performances by now." And Jason laughed. My son laughed. There I understood something I should have accepted months ago. I was completely alone. In my own house, surrounded by my own blood, I was more alone than if I lived on the street. The question was no longer if Tiffany wanted me to disappear. The question was, how much longer could I survive her plan? And the answer, with my split pills and my heart failing every night, was not much. It was a Thursday night, when my body finally gave up. I had spent the entire day feeling strange, as if floating outside my own body. The dizziness was constant. My vision blurred every time I stood up. But I said nothing. I had already learned that complaining only brought mockery and accusations of being dramatic. It was 11 at night. Jason had already arrived from work and eaten dinner in silence, while Tiffany told him about her shopping day. I was in my little room, lying down, trying to calm my breathing. Every inhalation was an effort, as if I had a rock on my chest. Then it happened. My heart stopped. Not literally, but that's how it felt. 1 beat, 2, 3, and then nothing. A terrifying void that lasted eternities. When it beat again, it did so with such force that my body arched on the bed. Then another pause, another void, another violent beat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I could only bring my hand to my chest and feel my heart rebelling against my body, beating without pattern, without rhythm, without control. I managed to fall out of bed. The thud against the floor echoed in the house. I heard hurried steps. My room door flew open and Jason appeared, eyes wide with panic. "Mom!" he shouted, kneeling beside me. "What's wrong?" I couldn't answer. I just pointed to my chest, eyes full of tears that weren't just from physical pain, but from the relief of finally seeing my son look at me with real concern. Tiffany appeared behind him, in a satin robe and a face of annoyance. "What happened now?" "Call an ambulance," ordered Jason, holding my head. His voice trembled. "Quick, Tiffany." I saw the hesitation in her eyes. For an eternal second, Tiffany looked directly at me, and I saw the naked truth in her expression. She was calculating if it was worth calling for help, or if it would be better to let nature run its course. "Tiffany!" shouted Jason, and she blinked, breaking the spell. I'm going, always so exaggerated," she muttered while taking out her cell phone. The following minutes were a blur of pain and terror. My heart continued its erratic dance, beating wildly and then stopping. I was sweating cold. My lips went numb. Jason cried, holding my hand, repeating, "Hang on, Mom, hang on." The ambulance arrived in 15 minutes that seemed like hours. The paramedics entered with their equipment, put oxygen on me, monitored my heart. I heard technical words I didn't understand. Severe arrhythmia, fibrillation, unstable. They loaded me onto the stretcher. Jason got into the ambulance with me, his face distraught. Tiffany stayed at the door of the house, arms crossed, watching me leave with an expression I couldn't decipher. But that wasn't exactly concern. At General Hospital, they took me straight to the ER. Doctors and nurses moved around my stretcher like organized ants. They connected me to machines that beeped constantly. They injected me with something that made the world become blurry and distant. When I woke up, it was already early morning. I was in a hospital bed, connected to a heart monitor, emitting regular beeps. Jason was asleep in an uncomfortable chair next to my bed, head resting on the mattress. My hand was between his. For a moment, just a moment, I saw my boy. The 10-year-old Jason, who fell asleep next to my bed when I was sick with the flu. The teenager who took care of me when his father worked nights. My real son, before Tiffany. A doctor entered with a tablet in her hands. It was Dr. Evans, the same one who had treated me since my diagnosis 6 months ago. Her expression was serious, worried. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said softly, waking Jason with the sound of her voice. "I need to ask you some important questions." Jason sat up immediately, rubbing his eyes. "Is my mom okay?" "She is stable now, but what happened last night was very serious. She had episodes of ventricular tachycardia. Her heart was completely out of control. If she had arrived 10 minutes later." She left the sentence unfinished, but we all understood the ending. "But she has her medicine," Jason said, confused. "She takes it every day." "That is precisely what concerns me," responded Dr. Evans, looking directly at me. "We did complete blood work. The levels of her medication in her blood are extremely irregular. She has very high peaks followed by dangerous drops. That shouldn't happen with her extended-release medication." My heart, although now stable thanks to IV drugs, did a flip. I knew what was coming. "Mrs. Sullivan?" continued Dr. Evans, pulling up a chair and sitting in front of me. "Does anyone else have access to your medications?" The question floated in the air like thick smoke. Jason looked at me, waiting for my answer. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "How do you tell your son that his wife is tampering with your meds? How do you pronounce those words without destroying what little family remains?" "Mom," said Jason, squeezing my hand. "Answer, did anyone touch your pills?" I started with a broken voice. At that moment, Tiffany entered the room. She had her hair perfectly styled, makeup applied, dressed as if she were going to a meeting and not to visit her mother-in-law in the hospital. She was carrying a plastic bag. "Good morning," she said with a bright smile. "I brought Margaret's pill bottle. I thought the doctors would want to see it." Dr. Evans extended her hand. "Yes, I was just about to ask for it. Thank you." Tiffany handed her the bottle. For a second, our gazes crossed, and I saw something in her eyes that froze my blood. Defiance. She was daring me to speak, sure that I wouldn't dare. Dr. Evans opened the bottle and poured some capsules into her hand. Her expression changed immediately. Her brow furrowed. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "These pills are split," she said, and her voice had a sharp edge. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the machines seemed to stop making noise. "Split?" asked Jason, looking at the capsules in the doctor's hand. "I don't understand." Dr. Evans held up one of the half pills, showing it clearly. Someone cut them in half, very neatly, with something sharp. Her eyes moved between Tiffany and me. "Who did this?" Tiffany went rigid. I saw how the color began to leave her face, but her voice came out firm, almost offended. I know nothing about that. Margaret keeps her medicines in her bathroom. I don't even touch them. Mom. Jason turned to me. Did you split them? I shook my head. Dr. Evans stood up. Her presence filled the room. I need you to understand the gravity of this. Extended release pills must never be split. The special coating controls how the medicine is released over 24 hours. When that coating is broken, the entire content releases at once. And what does that mean? Asked Jason, though his voice was already trembling because he knew the answer wouldn't be good. It means that instead of receiving a stable dose all day, Mrs. Sullivan received massive doses followed by periods without medication. For someone with her heart condition, that is like playing Russian roulette. Every dose was a gamble on whether her heart would hold out or not. The oxygen in the room seemed to evaporate. Jason let go of my hand and stared at the split pills in Dr. Evans's palm as if they were evidence of a crime. Because they were. But that means, started to say my son, and I saw how his brain worked connecting the dots he had been ignoring for weeks. That means someone could have killed her. Dr. Evans nodded gravely. What happened last night was not a normal arrhythmia episode. It was a direct reaction to improperly administered medication. Mrs. Sullivan was lucky her heart resisted. Another person with her condition would no longer be here. Tiffany took a step back, hitting the wall. Her hands shook slightly, but her expression remained one of calculated indignation. You cannot be insinuating that This is ridiculous. Margaret probably split them herself, and now wants to blame me. She always does this. She always plays the victim. Mom. Jason turned to me, eyes shining with held-back tears. Tell me the truth. Who split your pills? I looked at my son, then at Tiffany. She returned the look with those cold, challenging eyes. In her expression, I read the message clearly. If you speak, you lose your son forever. He will believe me, not you. But something had changed inside me. Maybe it was the proximity of death. Maybe it was seeing Jason finally paying attention to me. Maybe it was simply that I had nothing left to lose. Tiffany, I said, and my voice came out firmer than it had sounded in months. Tiffany split them. 3 weeks ago. She told me that way they would last longer, and we would save money. Lie, shouted Tiffany, and her mask finally began to crack. She is lying. Jason, your mother is inventing things to separate us. But Jason wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Doubts about Tiffany. Finally, after so much time, my son was questioning his wife. Is it true? Asked Jason, turning to Tiffany. Did you split my mom's pills? I just wanted to help, stammered Tiffany, and her voice lost all its previous assurance. The pills are very expensive, Jason. $200 every month. I thought with half it would be enough, that we would save. You thought? Exploded Jason. And it was the first time in 3 years I saw him raise his voice to his wife. Who gave you the right to think about my mother's health? Who told you to play with her medication? You, responded Tiffany, recovering some of her venom. You said your mom was an economic burden. You said she spent too much. You said we needed to save. I was just doing what you wanted. The room went silent again. Jason froze, those words digging into his conscience. I saw the exact moment my son understood his own complicity. Dr. Evans cleared her throat, breaking the moment. I need to be very clear about something. What was done here wasn't an innocent mistake by someone wanting to save money. It was criminal negligence that endangered my patient's life. It wasn't negligence, I said, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. I told her that the doctor had said I couldn't split the pills. I explained they were extended release. She knew. All gazes turned toward Tiffany. Her face, which had started to pale, was now completely white, like paper, just as I described in the office. I didn't know it was so serious, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, you knew, I continued, and felt something ancient and dormant inside me waking up. Fury. I told you the same day you split them. I told you that Dr. Evans was very specific, and you answered me that doctors exaggerate, that they just want to sell medicines. Margaret, I never. And it wasn't just that. I interrupted her, my voice gaining strength with every word. You said if I didn't like it, I could leave. That option was on the table. You threatened to throw me into the street if I didn't take the split pills. Jason dropped into the chair, hands covering his face. My God, he whispered. What have we done? What she did, corrected Dr. Evans, pointing at Tiffany. And I need to ask you directly, Mrs. Tiffany, did you know that altering this medication could kill Mrs. Sullivan? Tiffany opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes moved frantically among all of us, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Finally, something in her broke. She is a burden, she screamed, and her true nature finally surfaced like pus from an infected wound. She lives in our house, spends our money, occupies our space. I just wanted things to be easier for us. Easier, repeated Jason, lifting his head to look at her. You put my mother's life at risk so things would be easier. For us? Insisted Tiffany, approaching him. Everything I did was for us, Jason, so we could have our own life without your mother always being in the middle. Don't you understand? While she is there, we will never be free. Free? Jason's voice was barely a whisper, loaded with horror. Tiffany, you almost killed her. My mother almost died because you tampered with her medicines. You exaggerate, responded Tiffany, but her voice no longer had strength. She wasn't going to die from taking half a pill instead of a whole one. She was just being dramatic as always. Dr. Evans intervened, her voice professional but with an edge of steel. Mrs. Tiffany, you need to understand something. What you did constitutes a crime. It is endangering the life of another person. I am required by law to report this. The color left in Tiffany disappeared completely. Report? You can't. I did nothing illegal. I just tried to save money. You altered prescribed medication knowing it was dangerous, continued Dr. Evans. Mrs. Sullivan warned you specifically. You ignored those warnings and proceeded anyway. That isn't negligence, ma'am. That is intentional. Jason! Tiffany turned to my son with desperation. Tell them they are wrong. Tell them I would never do something like that. You know me. You know I love you, that I love our life together. But Jason wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. And in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in 3 years. Recognition. Finally, after so much time, my son was truly seeing me. Mom, he said with a broken voice. Forgive me. God. Forgive me for not believing you, for not defending you, for letting this get so far. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief. My son had returned. Late, almost too late, but he had returned. Jason, you can't believe her, begged Tiffany with a strident voice. Your mother has always been manipulative. She is acting now so you get on her side. It is what she has always done. Shut up, said Jason, and his voice was cold as ice. Just shut up, Tiffany. I don't want to hear your voice anymore. Tiffany recoiled as if slapped. For the first time since I met her, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She had lost her control over Jason, and she knew it. Dr. Evans headed toward the door. I am going to call security and report this incident. Mrs. Tiffany, I suggest you get a lawyer. A lawyer? Tiffany's voice was barely a squeak. You can't do this. Jason, do something. But my son just shook his head, tears falling down his face. I already did too much, Tiffany. Or rather, I did nothing when I should have, and that almost cost my mother her life. Tiffany looked at me then with pure hate, without filters, without masks. This is your fault, she hissed. Everything is your fault. If you had left when you should have, none of this would have happened. No, I said, holding her gaze without blinking. This is your fault, Tiffany. For being greedy. For being cruel. For believing you could take everything from me, even my life, and get away with it. Dr. Evans returned with 2 security guards. Mrs. Tiffany, I need to ask you to leave the hospital. Now. Tiffany opened her mouth to protest, but the guards were already flanking her. With a last look of fury toward me, she let herself be escorted out of the room. Her expensive perfume remained floating in the air as evidence of her poisonous presence. When the door closed behind her, Jason collapsed. He knelt beside my bed. He took my hand in his and cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a boy. "I'm sorry, Mom," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I was an idiot. A terrible son. I failed you in everything." I stroked his hair, as I used to do when he had nightmares as a little one. "You are here now," I said softly. "That is what matters." But deep in my heart, I knew this hadn't ended. Tiffany had shown her true face, yes, but a woman like her wouldn't give up so easily, and I had to make sure she could never hurt anyone again. It was time to stop being the victim. It was time to fight. They kept me hospitalized 3 more days. 3 days of constant monitoring, adjusting my medication with controlled IV doses, allowing my heart to relearn to beat with the correct rhythm. 3 days in which Jason didn't leave my side, sleeping in that uncomfortable chair, bringing me water, apologizing every hour as if words could erase 3 years of abandonment. I forgave him. Of course I forgave him. He was my son, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the split pills. I heard the night conversations where he had agreed with every cruelty of Tiffany's. A mother's love is unconditional, but trust, once broken, needs more than apologies to rebuild. The second day, while Jason had gone down to the cafeteria, I received an unexpected visit. The door opened, and in walked my cousin Linda, with her leather briefcase and that elegant bearing that had always characterized her. Linda was 62 years old, a lawyer specializing in family law, and we hadn't seen each other in almost 2 years because Tiffany had found 1,000 excuses to prevent her from visiting. "Margaret," she said, and her voice broke upon seeing me connected to all those machines. She approached and hugged me carefully so as not to disconnect any wire. "I found out from a neighbor. I came as soon as I could," I cried in her arms. I cried everything I hadn't been able to cry in 3 years, all the accumulated pain, all the stored humiliation. Linda held me in silence, letting me empty all that anguish. When finally I calmed down, she sat in the chair Jason had been occupying and took a notebook out of her briefcase. Her expression had changed from family concern to professional concentration. "Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning, and don't skip anything," I told her. "Every detail. The gradual invasion of my house, the loss of my bedroom, the money they forced me to pay, the constant humiliations, and finally, the split pills and the veiled threat to kick me out if I didn't obey." Linda wrote fast, her sharp eyes shining with something I recognized as professional fury. When I finished, she closed her notebook with a dry snap. "Margaret, what Tiffany did is not only morally reprehensible, it is legally actionable," she said, leaning forward. "We are talking about financial violence, psychological abuse, and, most gravely, endangering your life by altering your medication. That is a criminal offense." "I don't want to get Jason in trouble," I said immediately. "Jason is an adult who made decisions," responded Linda firmly, "and now he has to face the consequences. But I am not talking about him. I am talking about you, about protecting you, about ensuring this never happens again." She took more papers out of her briefcase. "First, that house is yours. It has your name on the deed. No one, absolutely no one, can force you to share it or pay to live in it. Second, the money they took from you monthly constitutes dispossession. You have the right to recover it. Third, we need a restraining order against Tiffany." "A restraining order? So she cannot get near you or your property?" "She already demonstrated she represents a real danger to your life, Margaret. Dr. Evans already made the official report. That is solid evidence." The idea terrified me and liberated me at the same time. "And Jason? If I kick Tiffany out of the house, will my son also have to go?" Linda sighed. "That is a decision Jason will have to make. But you need to set clear boundaries. No more invasions. No more abuse. Your house, your rules. If he wants to stay, it will be on your terms, not hers." "I'm afraid," I admitted. "Afraid of ending up alone. Jason is all I have left." "Being alone is better than being accompanied by someone who wants to destroy you," said Linda, taking my hand. "And you aren't alone. You have me. You have neighbors who love you. You have a life that deserves to be lived with dignity." At that moment, Jason returned with a coffee in his hand. He stopped upon seeing Linda, and something in his expression told me he knew exactly why she was there. "Cousin Linda," he greeted with a tense voice. "Jason," she responded with professional coldness. "I was just talking to Margaret about her legal options." My son went pale. "Mom, please, don't do this. I understand. I know I was wrong. Tiffany and I will separate. She will leave, I will stay, and everything will go back to how it was before." "It cannot go back to how it was before," I said softly. "Jason, I almost died. And you agreed with everything she did. You said I was a burden, that I dramatized, that I needed to grow up." He collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But I was blind. Mom, Tiffany manipulated me, made me believe things that weren't true. Now I see it clearly." "And what guarantees you won't be blinded again?" asked Linda. "What guarantees that in a few months, when your mother forgives you and lowers her guard, the resentment for having to care for her won't return? That another Tiffany won't appear?" "I'm not like that," protested Jason. "I love my mother." "Love isn't enough when trust has been broken," responded Linda. "Margaret needs legal protection. She needs to ensure her house, her money, and her health are protected. From everyone, even from you." The silence that followed was dense and painful. I saw my son processing Linda's words, finally understanding the magnitude of the damage caused. "What do you need me to do, Mom? Tell me what you need and I will do it." I looked at Linda. She nodded, giving me permission to speak. "I need Tiffany out of my house immediately, with a restraining order. I need returned all the money taken from me these 3 years. And I paused, because this next part hurt me more than anything. I need you to also find your own place." Jason lifted his head sharply, eyes full of tears. "Are you kicking me out?" "I'm not kicking you out," I said, and my own voice trembled. "I am letting you go. You are 42 years old, Jason. You need your own space, your own life, and I need to recover mine. I need to be Margaret again, not just your mother, not just someone's mother-in-law, me. But I want to take care of you. Then take care of me by visiting me, calling me, being present in my life without living my life." I said with a firmness I didn't know I had. "Taking care of me doesn't mean appropriating my space. It means respecting it." Linda took documents out of her briefcase. They discharged me Monday morning. Linda picked me up from the hospital because Jason had to be at work and, honestly, I needed someone by my side who didn't carry the weight of 3 years of guilt. My cousin drove in silence toward my house, her leather briefcase in the back seat full of documents that would change everything. As we approached the quiet suburb, I felt my heart race, but this time not from arrhythmia. It was fear mixed with something more powerful, determination. During 3 days in that hospital, connected to machines that kept me alive, I had had time to think, to remember who I was before becoming the shadow hiding in the back room. "Are you ready?" asked Linda when she parked in front of my house. I looked at the modest facade of my home, the walls Frank and I painted one Sunday in April 28 years ago, the living room window where I used to sit and embroider while he watched football. My house. Not Tiffany's house. Mine. "Yes," I responded. "I am ready." We had planned everything carefully. Linda had summoned Tiffany and Jason at 11 in the morning with the excuse of resolving family matters in a civilized manner. She had also invited 2 witnesses, my neighbor Brenda, who had witnessed several of Tiffany's humiliations, and Mr. Henderson, the gentleman from the corner store who had known me for 30 years. When we entered, Tiffany was sitting on the armchair she herself had bought, painting her nails an intense red. She didn't even look up when we entered. Jason was standing by the window, shoulders tense and miserable expression. "You arrived," said Tiffany with a flat voice, still not looking at me. "I thought you would stay longer in the hospital, being dramatic." Linda stepped forward before I could answer. "Mrs. Tiffany, I am Linda Sullivan, attorney specializing in family law. I am here representing my cousin Margaret in legal matters related to this property and recent events." Now, Tiffany did look up. Her expression hardened upon seeing Linda's briefcase. "Lawyer? Please, Margaret, always so dramatic. You almost die, and now you're walking around with lawyers. How fast? You almost killed me," I said, and my voice sounded stronger than it had sounded in years. There is a difference. Tiffany let out a fake laugh. Still with that, I already told you I just wanted to save money. It wasn't a big deal. Linda opened her briefcase and took out a thick folder. On the contrary, Mrs. Tiffany, it was a very big deal. So much that I have here the official medical report from Dr. Evans, where she declares that the alteration of my cousin's medication put her life in real and immediate danger. I also have your statement from the hospital, where you admitted to having split the pills. The color started to drain from Tiffany's face. I didn't admit anything. They misunderstood me. There are witnesses, continued Linda relentlessly. Dr. Evans, 2 nurses, and Jason. Everyone heard your confession. Tiffany turned toward my son. Jason, say something. Tell them they are exaggerating. But Jason just shook his head, eyes fixed on the floor. I can't, Vivi. I can't keep lying for you. Linda placed documents on the coffee table. In addition to the crime of endangering another person's life, we have evidence of financial abuse. For 3 years, you forced Mrs. Sullivan to pay you $750 monthly from her Social Security check under threat of kicking her out of her own house. She had to cooperate, protested Tiffany, but her voice had lost all its assurance. She lived here. She used services. This house has Margaret's name on the deed, interrupted Linda, showing the documents. She is the only legal owner. You had no right to charge her absolutely anything. In fact, my cousin has the right to recover every dollar you took from her. $750 monthly for 36 months. That is $27,000. The silence that followed was absolute. Tiffany had gone completely pale. I don't have that money. I know, said Linda with a cold smile. That is why we brought this. She took out more papers. Complete inventory of all items you bought and brought to this house. Clothes, furniture, decoration. Everything totals approximately $30,000. Tiffany jumped to her feet. You can't take my things. They are things bought with stolen money, responded Linda. Money you extorted from my cousin. Legally, all that belongs to Margaret as restitution. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Linda had coordinated perfectly. Brenda and Mr. Henderson entered, followed by a sheriff's deputy Linda had contacted. Good morning, greeted the officer, showing his badge. Deputy Miller, I am here to witness the service of a restraining order. Tiffany backed away as if slapped. Restraining order? This is insane. The officer handed her the papers. Mrs. Tiffany Sullivan, you are hereby prohibited from approaching within 100 yards of Mrs. Margaret Sullivan, her residence, or any property in her name. You have 24 hours to vacate the property located at. No! Screamed Tiffany, and finally her mask broke completely. This is my house. I have lived here 3 years. You cannot kick me out just like that. Yes, we can, I said, and my voice was firm as rock. Because this was never your house, Tiffany. It was mine. It always was. She looked at me with pure hate. You useless old woman. After everything I did for you, I gave you company, redesigned this horrible house, tried to modernize you, and this is how you pay me. Company? I repeated, feeling how the fury finally found its voice. You took my bedroom, locked me in the back room, threw out the rocking chair my father had made for my wedding, humiliated me in front of your friends, stole my money, and almost killed me by altering my medicines. That is what you call doing something for me? Everything I did was so this house would be worth something, yelled Tiffany. It was full of old junk, dead people's dishes. I improved it. You didn't improve it, intervened Brenda, my neighbor, with a trembling but brave voice. You stripped it. I saw how you treated Margaret. I heard you call her useless old woman from my window. I saw how you threw her things in the trash. Mr. Henderson nodded. I was also a witness. Margaret came to my store crying, buying the minimum because you took her money. Once she told me she didn't even have enough for a pound of sugar because you had forced her to pay an invented electric bill. Tiffany turned toward Jason desperately. Are you going to allow this? Are you going to let them humiliate me like this? I am your wife. Jason finally looked up. His eyes were red, but his voice was firm. Not anymore, Tiffany. I spoke with a lawyer yesterday. I filed for divorce this morning. The world stopped. Tiffany stumbled, holding onto the back of the armchair. "What? I married you because I thought you were good," continued Jason, and I saw tears rolling down his cheeks. "Because I thought you loved me. But you only wanted this house. You only wanted to get rid of my mother to keep her property. That isn't true." "No?" Linda took out her phone. "Because we have this." She pressed play. From the phone speakers came Tiffany's voice, clear as crystal. "The faster the old lady goes, the sooner the house will be ours. Jason is too noble to kick her out, but I'm not. I am going to make her life so miserable that she decides to leave herself. And if not, well, at her age, and with that sick heart, nature can help a little." It was a recording of a phone call, Tiffany talking to someone, probably her sister. I don't know how Linda got it, but there it was. Irrefutable evidence of her intentions. Tiffany collapsed onto the armchair, completely defeated. That was taken out of context. "There is no context that justifies wishing for someone's death," said the officer. "Ma'am, I suggest you cooperate with the voluntary eviction. Otherwise, we will proceed legally, and this will get much more complicated for you." I looked at that woman who had turned my life into a hell for 3 years. That woman who had slept in my bed, eaten at my table, breathed my air, all while planning my disappearance. And I felt nothing. No fury, no sadness, only relief that it was finally over. "You have 24 hours, I said calmly. "You can take your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays as payment for what you stole from me. And if you ever come near me or my house again, I will make sure the criminal charges for attempted homicide go forward. Understood?" Tiffany looked at me with eyes full of hate. "You are going to regret this. You are going to die alone in this miserable house. No one is going to want you. No one is going to visit you." "I prefer to die alone and in peace," I answered, "than to live accompanied by someone who wants to kill me." The officer escorted Tiffany out of the living room so she could pack her things. Jason approached me with a decomposed face. "Mom, you also have to go," I said softly but firmly. "Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. You need your own space, and I need to recover mine." "Are you kicking me out?" "I am setting you free, setting both of us free." I took his hand. "I love you, Jason, but I cannot live with you after everything that happened. We need time. We need to rebuild our relationship from zero, without either living under the other's roof." My son cried in my arms like the boy he once was. And I cried too, not out of sadness, but out of liberation. Because finally, after 3 years of being invisible in my own house, I had recovered my voice. And this time, no one would take it from me again. Tiffany left my house 24 hours later, with 3 suitcases full of clothes and an expression of hate that could have burned everything in its path. I watched her from my living room window, while she put her things in a cab. She didn't take the expensive furniture she had bought, nor the abstract paintings, nor the Italian espresso machine. All that stayed as part of the payment for the $27,000 she owed me. Jason helped her load the suitcases. I saw how she tried to hug him, how he pulled away stiffly. I heard, because I left the window open on purpose, when she begged him one last time. "Jason, please, this is all a misunderstanding. We can start over somewhere else, far from your mother. Just the 2 of us." "There is no us two, Tiffany," responded my son with a voice that sounded 10 years older. "There never really was there? You just wanted the house. I love you. No, you love what I could give you. There is a difference." He closed the taxi door. "The lawyer will contact you for the divorce papers." When the taxi drove away, I felt a weight of 3 years lift from my shoulders. Linda, who had been by my side throughout the process, put an arm around my shoulders. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I answered, and it was true. But Tiffany's story didn't end with that taxi driving down the street. Oh, no. Justice has curious ways of completing its cycles, and Tiffany was about to discover that when you build your life on lies and manipulation, the entire building can collapse in a matter of days. It was Brenda, my neighbor, who told me the first part. 3 days after the eviction, she came to visit me with cinnamon rolls and coffee, like in the old days before Tiffany forbade me from having visitors. "Margaret, "You won't believe what I found out," she said, with eyes shining with fresh gossip. "Do you remember Tiffany's sister, Debbie? The one who always came in that new car?" I nodded. Debbie had visited the house several times, always dressed in expensive clothes, always bragging about her perfect life. Well, it turns out Tiffany owed her money. A lot of money. Debbie lent her $40,000 a year ago for Tiffany to invest in a business. Obviously, there was no business. Tiffany spent it on clothes and outings. Brenda took a sip of her coffee. And now Debbie is furious because she found out everything that happened. She is demanding her money back immediately. And does Tiffany have that money? What do you think? Brenda laughed. The crazy woman spent everything on appearances. She doesn't even have enough for rent on a room. But that wasn't all. Jason arrived that afternoon with information that completed the puzzle of who Tiffany really was. "Mom," said my son, sitting on the sofa with a somber expression, "I hired a private investigator. I needed to know who I had really married." He took out a folder and opened it on the table. There were photographs, documents, records. Tiffany has debts with 4 different banks. Credit cards she maxed out, buying things she could never pay for. The total is $87,000. All the cards are in her name. That's why I never knew. $87,000. A fortune for someone who didn't work and who had been living off my money and Jason's for 3 years. "There is more," continued my son, turning to another page. "Before meeting me, Tiffany was married. Twice." I froze. Twice? Her first husband left her when he discovered she had emptied his bank account. The second one kicked her out of his house when he realized she had forged his signature on documents to sell a piece of land he owned. She almost went to jail for that. I looked at my son, seeing the pain in his eyes upon discovering that the woman he loved was actually a professional scammer, a predator who identified vulnerable men, widowers, single men with properties, and used them until squeezing them dry. "Jason, she chose you for something specific too, right?" I asked softly. He nodded with tears in his eyes. "Because she knew you had this house, he investigated me before approaching. She knew you were a widow, that the house was paid off, that sooner or later I would inherit it. Everything was calculated from the beginning." Linda's phone rang that same afternoon. She answered, and her expression changed to professional satisfaction. "Interesting," she said when she hung up. She looked at me with a smile. It was Deputy Miller. Apparently, when word spread of the restraining order and accusations against Tiffany, other people started talking. "What people?" "Remember Tiffany's friend, Cindy, the one who came to eat with those other women?" Linda consulted her notes. "Well, Cindy had lent $5,000 to Tiffany 6 months ago, money she obviously never saw back. Now she is filing a lawsuit. And the other friends? One she owes $3,000, another $4,000. Apparently, Tiffany borrowed from all her acquaintances with the same story. That you were very sick, that she needed money for your medicines and treatments, that she would pay it back as soon as she inherited the house." I was speechless. Tiffany had used my real illness to scam her own friends. She had commercialized my suffering. "There is more," continued Linda, almost enjoying delivering every piece of information. "The gym Tiffany went to? She owes 4 months of membership. The nail salon? 3 months. The boutique where she bought clothes? She has pending invoices for $2,000. Tiffany had lived like a queen, but on borrowed money, stolen, and never paid back. And now, without the house she so coveted, without the husband who maintained her lies, without the roof that gave her respectability, her whole house of cards was collapsing." A week later, Jason came with the final news. "Mom, they found Tiffany." "Where?" "Living in a rented room on the bad side of town, the cheapest place she could find, $150 a week, shared bathroom." He paused. "Her sister Debbie filed a formal lawsuit. The friends too. The banks initiated collection processes, and the boutique, where she owed the $2,000, filed fraud charges because she signed promissory notes she never fulfilled. And she is desperate. She called me yesterday, crying, begging me to withdraw the divorce petition. She says if we stay married, we can sell this house and pay all her debts. That we can start over. And what did you tell her? That this house was never mine to sell. That it is yours, and if she tries to get near you or this property, I will ensure personally that she goes to jail." My son looked at me with a mix of pain and pride. I told her I learned from the best. from my mother, who finally found her voice and her strength. 2 weeks later, Linda arrived with the final document. She placed it on the table with a satisfied smile. The criminal complaint for endangering your life proceeded. The judge considered the evidence, the medical report, the altered pills, the recording of the phone call, and issued a sentence. What kind of sentence? 2 years in prison, suspended under probation. That means she won't go to jail immediately. But if she commits any other crime in the next 2 years, she will serve the full sentence. Also, she has to pay a fine of $5,000 to the state and the $27,000 she stole from you. She doesn't have that money, I said. I know. That is why the judge ordered the seizure of her assets. The problem is Tiffany has no assets. The only thing of value she possessed was the expensive clothes she bought with your money. And that is already here. Linda leaned back on the sofa. Basically, Tiffany Sullivan went from living in a nice house in the suburbs with a hard-working husband and all comforts to living in a $150 a week room with debts of more than $100,000, a criminal record and no way to pay them. All because she wanted more than what corresponded to her, I murmured. All because she believed she could destroy someone without consequences, corrected Linda. A month after Tiffany left, Mr. Henderson told me he had seen her. She was at the flea market, Margaret, selling used clothes on the ground. Those expensive clothes she always wore, now she is selling them for $5, $10 apiece, trying to scrape together money to pay even a fraction of what she owes. The image impacted me. Tiffany, with her expensive heels and her hair dyed blonde that already showed dark roots, sitting on the ground of the flea market on a mat, selling the same dresses she had bought with my stolen money. The same dresses she strutted in while calling me useless old woman. Do you know what is most ironic? Continued Mr. Henderson. The people at the market already know who she is. Word has already spread about what she did to you. No one buys from her. They just pass, look at her, and keep going. That was true poetic justice. It wasn't just that Tiffany had lost the house, the husband, the comfortable life. It was that she had lost something more valuable in a community like ours, her reputation, in our neighborhood, where everyone knows everyone, where stories pass from neighbor to neighbor. Tiffany had become synonymous with betrayal and cruelty. The ladies who used to admire her now crossed the street to avoid greeting her. The friends who used to have lunch with her now were suing her. The merchants who used to sell to her on credit now demanded payment in advance. Jason kept his word. He moved 2 months later to a small but own apartment a few miles away. He came to visit me every Sunday. He brought donuts. He helped me with minor repairs around the house. Our relationship was rebuilding. Slowly, honestly. Do you know what I learned from all this, Mom? He told me one Sunday, while we drank coffee in the living room. That true love isn't imposed, it is respected. Tiffany isolated me from you, made me believe that loving you meant choosing only her. But that wasn't love, it was control. And now you understand the difference, I said, squeezing his hand. And now I understand I almost lost my mother for a woman who never really loved me, who only saw in me a means to an end. The last time I heard about Tiffany was 6 months after the eviction. Linda called me with the news. Tiffany left the state. Apparently, she took what little she had left and went out west. She left all her debts unpaid, all lawsuits unresolved. There is a warrant for her arrest if she returns. Is she gone forever? She will probably look for another vulnerable man in another place. People like her don't change, Margaret. They just change victims. I hung up the phone and looked around my living room. My mahogany rocking chair, rescued from the garage and restored by a neighborhood carpenter, was back in its place by the window. My lace curtains, which I had stored in a box, hung in the windows again. The photographs of Frank and me were back on the wall. My house had returned to being my house. I sat in my rocking chair and rocked gently, feeling the familiar creak of the old wood. I thought about Tiffany, fleeing to another state, carrying her debts and her destroyed reputation like invisible suitcases she could never let go of. She had wanted to take everything from me, my house, my dignity, my life, but in the end, the one who lost everything was her. Because when you build your existence on the destruction of others, eventually There is nothing solid left to stand on. That is true poetic justice. I didn't need to destroy Tiffany. She destroyed herself all on her own. I only had to find the courage to defend myself, to say enough, to remember that my life had value. And now, sitting in my rocking chair, in my living room, in my house, drinking coffee from my favorite mug that I had rescued from the trash, I understood something fundamental. The sweetest revenge is not destroying the one who hurt you. It is outliving them. It is recovering. It is living well while they carry the consequences of their own actions. Tiffany left empty-handed, running from her debts and shame. I kept everything that really mattered: my home, my dignity, and the certainty that I would never again let anyone turn me into a prisoner of my own life. 8 months have passed since Tiffany left my house with her 3 suitcases and her hate. 8 months since I recovered my life. And while I sit in my restored mahogany rocking chair, with the afternoon sun entering through clean windows, I can barely recognize the woman I was a year ago. The house has life again. Not the oppressive silence of when Tiffany controlled every space, but the peaceful silence of a home that breathes calmly. The walls she painted minimalist gray are now a soft yellow I chose myself. The lace curtains dance with the breeze. The aroma of coffee and cinnamon rolls fills the kitchen every morning without anyone telling me I am using too much gas or sugar. My health improved surprisingly fast once I went back to taking my medication correctly. Dr. Evans monitors me every month and always says the same thing. "Margaret, your heart is responding wonderfully. It seems removing toxic stress was the best medicine." She is right. My heart beats now with a steady, reliable rhythm. The dizziness disappeared. The cold night sweats left. I sleep in my recovered bedroom, in a new bed I bought myself with my money, without having to ask anyone for permission. Jason comes every Sunday without fail. We drink coffee, chat, sometimes watch a movie, but now there is something different in our relationship. Respect. He no longer treats me like an obligation or a burden. He treats me like what I am, his mother, but also an independent woman with her own life. "You know what, Mom?" He told me 2 weeks ago while we ate a pot roast I had prepared. "I never told you directly, but I am proud of you, of how you defended yourself, of how you didn't allow Tiffany to destroy you." She almost succeeded, I admitted. Almost. But the key word is almost. Jason took my hand. "You taught me it is never too late to recover your voice. I was 42 years old and let someone manipulate me. You were 67 and found the strength to fight. That inspires me." My son is in therapy now. He is working on understanding how he allowed Tiffany to manipulate him, how he lost sight of his own values. It is a slow, painful, but necessary process, and I am proud of him for facing it. Linda became more than my cousin lawyer. She became my close friend, my confidant. She comes to visit me every week, sometimes just to have tea and chat. Other times she brings cases of other older women who are living situations similar to mine. "Margaret," she told me a month ago, "would you mind talking to a lady I know? Her name is Ruth. Her daughter-in-law treats her very badly, but she is afraid to say something because she doesn't want to lose her son." Thus began something I never imagined. I became a sort of informal counselor for older women suffering family abuse. Ruth came to my house, we drank coffee, and I told her my story. She cried the whole time, saying, "It is exactly what happens to me." I explained what Linda had taught me, that being afraid is normal, but that love shouldn't hurt, that sons can love their mothers without allowing their partners to mistreat them, that it is never too late to set boundaries. 3 weeks later, Ruth called me. She had confronted her daughter-in-law with legal support. She had recovered the money they had taken from her. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Margaret, I did it. I found my voice. Like you found yours." Since then, other women have come. Mary, 70 years old, whose son-in-law treated her like a servant. Helen, 65, whose daughter had isolated her from her friends. Each with her story, but all with the same pain. Being invisible in their own lives. And I listen to them, share my story. I give them Linda's number. I accompany them to discover they aren't alone, that abuse isn't love, that they deserve dignity regardless of their age. Mr. Henderson told me that at the market they call me Mrs. Margaret, the one who fought back. At first it made me uncomfortable, but now I see it as an honor. If my story can inspire a single woman not to stay silent, then almost dying was worth it. The rocking chair where I am sitting is my symbol of victory. I rescued it, restored it, put it back in its place. Just as I rescued myself, the carpenter who repaired it, Mr. Arthur, told me something beautiful. Missus, Margaret, this wood is 40 years old. It is splintered, mistreated, but look how strong it remains. Like you. On the wall by the window hangs a photograph Jason took 2 weeks ago. It is of me, sitting in this rocking chair with a cup of coffee in my hands, smiling. A real smile, not forced. My son framed it with a plaque that says, Margaret Sullivan, survivor, warrior. I use my full Social Security check now. Every dollar is mine, to spend as I decide. I bought new plants for the patio. I had the leaks in the roof fixed. I bought myself a terracotta-colored dress, not blue, because that color tires me, that makes me feel pretty. They are small things, but they are mine. Decided by me, paid by me, enjoyed by me. Brenda, my neighbor, comes almost every afternoon. We drink coffee, chat, laugh. She tells me neighborhood gossip, harmless, funny things, and I tell her about the women I have been helping. Sometimes we invite other neighbors. My living room, which Tiffany had turned into a cold and minimalist museum, is now full of voices, laughter, life. Do you know what is the most beautiful thing about all this, Margaret? Brenda told me yesterday that you recovered your light. When Tiffany was here, it was as if you had turned off. Now you shine again. Shine. What a beautiful word. Because that is how I feel. Luminous, alive, present. My cardiac health is stable, but I remain careful. I take my pills, whole, without splitting, every morning at the same time. I go to my medical appointments religiously. I walk 30 minutes every afternoon through the park. I eat well, sleep well, live well. Dr. Evans told me at my last appointment, Margaret, your tests are perfect. Your heart is functioning better than a year ago. Do you know why? Because it is no longer carrying the weight of 3 people. It only carries its own. She is right. For 3 years I carried the weight of keeping the peace, of not causing problems, of being invisible so as not to bother. That weight almost killed me. Now I only carry my own responsibilities, my own joys, my own decisions. And it turns out that when you only carry yours, life is much lighter. 3 weeks ago I received a letter. It was from Tiffany. Linda forwarded it to me because it had arrived at her office. Tiffany cannot contact me directly due to the restraining order. The letter came from out of state. Linda asked me if I wanted to read it. I thought about it a lot. Finally I said yes, not because I owed Tiffany anything, but because I needed to close that chapter completely. The letter was short, written by hand on cheap paper. It said, Margaret, I am working cleaning houses to pay my debts. I live in a room smaller than the back room where I put you. I eat once a day. I have nothing. I write this not to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but to tell you that you were right. I built my life trying to take theirs from others, and now I have nothing left. I hope you are happy in your house. At least one of us made it. T. I read the letter once. Then I folded it carefully and put it in an envelope I kept at the bottom of a drawer. I felt no triumph reading it. I felt no satisfaction for her suffering. I only felt closure. Like when you finish a sad book and close it knowing you never have to read it again. Are you going to answer? Asked Linda. No, I said. My answer is the life I am living now. That is the only answer she needs. Jason is dating someone new. He introduced me to her a month ago. Her name is Patricia. She is 45 years old. She is an elementary school teacher. She is kind, but not fake. Educated, but not manipulative. And most importantly, she treated me with respect from the first moment. Mrs. Sullivan, she told me when I met her. Jason told me everything that happened. I want you to know that I would never, ever try to replace you or take your place. If this relationship prospers, I would love to be your friend, not your competition. I cried when she told me that. I cried because I finally understood how it should be. 2 adult women respecting each other mutually, without threats, without territories to defend. Patricia, I told her, I don't need you to promise me anything. I just need you to be good to my son. And from what I see, you already are. This morning I woke up early, as always. I prepared my coffee calmly, without rush. I sat in my rocking chair and watched the sunrise through the window. The sky painted itself orange and pink, and I thought about all the mornings I lost, feeling miserable, invisible, without worth. I won't get those mornings back. Those 3 years are gone, but I have these. Every sunrise where I can breathe deep in my own house, where I can decide how to use my day, where I can be myself, without asking for permission. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror after washing my face. I saw wrinkles. 68 years leave a mark. I saw silver hair I no longer bother to dye. I saw tired but clear eyes. And for the first time in years, I liked what I saw. I didn't see a useless old woman, as Tiffany called me. I didn't see a burden, as she made me feel. I saw Margaret Sullivan, widow, mother, survivor, warrior. I saw a woman who almost lost everything, but refused to lose the most important thing, herself. Now, as the sun sets and the house fills with that golden light of the afternoon, I tuck myself into my rocking chair with a blanket over my legs and a book in my hands. It is a book about brave women who changed history. Linda gave it to me with a dedication. For Margaret, who changed her own history. I hear the familiar sound of the key in the door. It is Jason, arriving for our Sunday dinner. He brings Chinese food, my favorite, and his genuine smile. "Hi, Mom," he says, kissing my forehead. "How was your week?" "Good," I answer. "Very good." And it is true, it was good, like all my weeks now, because I learned something every woman should know, regardless of her age. Your life belongs to you. Your space belongs to you. Your dignity belongs to you. And no one, absolutely no one, has the right to take them from you. It took me 67 years, and almost dying to learn it. But I learned it, and now I dedicate my days to ensuring other women don't take so long to discover it. Because true wealth isn't in the houses you possess or the money you keep. It is in the capacity to look in the mirror and recognize the woman you see. It is in being able to breathe deep, without fear, in your own home. It is in knowing you survived, that you recovered, that you found your voice when everyone expected you to remain silent. That is me now. Margaret Sullivan, 68 years old, survivor, warrior, free. And this time, no one will take that from me. Never again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it is never too late to recover your life and your dignity, leave me your comment. Tell me, where are you listening from? Have you lived something similar, or do you know someone who needs to hear these words? Your story matters as much as mine. And together, all the voices that were once silenced, we can create a chorus impossible to ignore. Like if you believe respect has no age and subscribe to keep sharing stories of life, of struggle, and of women who refuse to disappear. Because we all deserve to live with dignity. We all deserve to be seen. And we all deserve a second chance to shine. Remember, true freedom begins the day you decide your life is worth more than the peace of others.